Hi, Simon. It is that time where I get to take over for a little bit on the InSpirrall podcast whilst we are with our listeners and talk to you, the host, and find out how things are going and the questions you've been and conversations you've been having. So here we are. And it's been for us about a week since the podcast launched. For everyone else, it might be a little bit later on. And of course, the conversations that have come out this week are not quite as new to you and me as they are to everyone else. But I'd like to touch a little bit on how that first week has gone, with, launching the podcast, looking at the reactions to the conversations that have been released, and then take it from there, really. So, how are things going?
Like a dream come true, really. Hi, Alex. Lovely to have you here. Thank you for all your energy and support across the day. I'd say it's a bit like a dream come true because all I've ever wanted to do is create a safe space where people can talk openly and can be the resource that perhaps others didn't have when they were going through their struggles. And that's exactly what's happened. The feedback for the guests has been off the chart. It really has. It's been eye-opening that people are forwarding the sessions, the interviews to other people, and then coming back with feedback about how they've didn't really know what they were thinking until someone else had said it, if that makes sense. So I think for the week, it's been emotional. The conversations have been at times very deep and very moving.
For sure. And those of those conversations that you've been having, not just a few cheers for the guests, but a few cheers for you at times, or certainly emotional moments. I just wonder how for you that presents in terms of you managing that kind of energy and conversation within that space, both whilst you're holding that space for your guests and afterwards as well.
It's a great question. I think my main role is only to support. These are volunteers wanting to tell their stories, to talk about the circumstances that led up to and after whatever tragedy, trauma, life experience, lessons that they've gone through. And all I have to do is clear the path for them, is to give them permission and allow them to do it in um, that comfortable safe room, really. So I have been emotional. The times when I speak to guests, that's the first time I've heard their story for real. I'm in it with them. I'm reacting to them. It is two people discussing what has happened to someone, and it's hard to detach. I don't want to detach, to be honest. It's really, really lovely to go into someone's darkness and just see it through their eyes. And I know that every word they're saying, others may relate to, so it really helps there too.
That's brilliant, and I'm sure the long walks with Marlowe help kind of decompress a little bit sometimes as part of that day to day, because we all have to when managing those types of energies, whether it's conversations or something else in those kind of deep and meaningful spaces, allow ourselves to kind of process as well, because it's a lot of information and a lot of different topics, and some topics you'll be close to, of course, and other topics will be less familiar. And it's fair to say that even the five conversations that have been released as we are talking about this now are all really, really varied in their content. And that will continue to be the case because that underarching theme of loneliness um, can kind of seep into all sorts of different facets of life, from very simple things. And I say that in the nicest way in talking about loneliness in Emma's first conversation around not wanting to be alone and then learning how to do all these different things on her own, to being in a space where you are grieving and feeling like you're alone even though you've got lots of people around you. That space, it, just so many different contextual layers to it.
Yes, I agree. And although there is emotion and tears, there are also some really gorgeous, lovely, poignant moments where people reflect and fill their heart with joy or pleasure or memories at those events in the past. And you know what? Everyone's human. There are also some laughs. There is light. what do they say, a light and shade in all of the conversations as people think their way through what's happened. And some of the conversations, yeah, they've been full on. And the ones we've recorded as well that are due to be released in the next week. When I look at some of the topics, workplace bullying, abuse and sexual trauma, navigating autism, consecutive traumas. Some have 4 major traumas in 1 year. And then also someone who has really just got to an age now where they've realized that they have been lying to themselves their whole life. They've been lying to themselves about what conformity is, lying to themselves about what makes them happy. And suddenly when you realize that, oh, there's a sense of liberty, isn't there? When you just
Hmm.
take off all the shackles and you think, do you know what? I'm happy being myself and I'm going to really double down on what I enjoy. So you can take little bits from all of the conversations, yes. And some might be a really unrelated topic, but the poignant piece you take from it really hits home.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to that conversation. I think probably I don't know many people that haven't at one point in their life gone, "Why am I doing this?" And I know certainly
Yeah,
based
who are you
on the
trying to impress?
conversations, yeah, the conversations I've had, especially with women as we get older, is we get less interested in giving too much of a fuck, Simon, in the nicest possible way. I don't like to necessarily drop the F bomb too often, but that is what it's all about. Giving way too many fucks about what other people think at times. I just want to come back around to some of those conversations, and I because I think it's really important when we're talking about like topics that can weigh heavy, like you say, to realize that there is humor in some of them. Um, I I definitely caught up with that, even when like talking about topics like grief, and you're imagining having conversations with someone who's giving you a hard time. I think that was something that we touched upon yesterday when reviewing a conversation. But I definitely feel that, and when Emma was talking about how we're all rocking around, like having that main character energy, like everyone's looking at us, everyone's talking about us, when in reality, no one really is, at least most of the time, anyway. So I wonder if there are any key moments with those conversations that have come out that really struck a chord with you at a personal level. To say that all of them
Yeah,
will have done to a point, I feel that, but
there's been 2 or 3 occasions, I'll generalize through the conversations. There's been 2 or 3 occasions where people obviously remember what happened in terms of the timeline and circumstance, but they very rarely get asked about how they feel.
mm,
And when it takes them back to the emotions of it, they really transport back into that moment. And that's the bit that I take from it that gets me because I'm on that journey with them. I'm going back to watch them at the very time that they're going through. Um, Jane, for example, just on the most recent one, because it's fresh in mind, was saying of the day that she had a knock on the door from the police to say that her um, husband had unfortunately died very suddenly. And she'd known for hours in her own mind because there was a series of events that didn't happen that day. Um, and one of the bits that she said was that when dealing with grief and trying to cope through grief, people were sending her flowers. She had hundreds and
mm.
hundreds of bunches of flowers. And the really interesting point there was that there was a timeline then again for the grief of the flowers and how long they took to live and what to do when the flowers died at the end and the psychological impact of having to put those in the bin. And are you really thinking that you're meant to be over grief at this point, the disappearance of close friends and family just for a week or two after the funeral? In various different ways about people reaching into someone who is going through grief rather than expecting them to reach out. So we're always telling people to reach out, which is great advice. Please do continue. But the way that people can reach in to save the person having that added responsibility on top of everything else, that really stuck with me. And that's just one example.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we sit there and we go, I don't wanna be like everyone else, and I don't wanna put myself on someone or just show up on their doorstep or just remind them of this, whereas sometimes you kinda have to. because you know that they don't want to be a burden on other people and they don't want to keep saying, "Oh, I don't feel okay today," or whatever it might be. So, yeah, that part of the conversation was really, really interesting. I recall the flower part of it especially.
It doesn't it doesn't, relate just to grief. Anyone feeling down as well, that so far that they've spoken about, they don't remember how someone made contact, but they remember
Mm,
the intention behind it. So if you knock on someone's door and it's the wrong time, that person still knows that someone's knocked on the door. If you
mm.
send round a meal and just say, "Heat this up whenever you want, I know you're feeling like you don't want to," that means so much. If someone's got a dog and they're also going through something, walk the dog, because there's guilt and looking at their beautiful dog every day and not being able to be there for them when they need it to, or help with the children and take them away. So just trying to alleviate. Um, and sometimes don't ask, because people, as we know, don't like shame and guilt, and they don't want to feel a burden or responsibility to people. But my goodness, will they feel the benefit when someone helps them out? And especially when it's a bit of a surprise as well, where it's just coming from the heart.
Absolutely. And so, one more thing I'd quite like to ask you. You are no stranger to holding space for people across the years, professionally and personally. And you've done it on many different platforms and facets. And that started for you in your own way, of course. But I wonder, so the podcast is new for you. It's a new way of sharing information and having those conversations. How is that going?
It's wonderful, because remember why we started this was to, um, it was for people to see others going through something that you were perhaps going through, to make yourself feel better about yourself, that you just weren't alone. And this method, people are forwarding it to each other. People can say, "Look, that's 6 minutes and 20 seconds. This is you. This is what you're going through." Or sending it to someone going, "I've been trying to explain how I feel. Look at this at 27 minutes. This is how it feels to be a parent of a non-verbal autistic child." When something, I think the example that Vanessa gave was when her child, who she adores, picked someone in a shopping mall, and she had to explain that Blake had special needs, and she was trying her best. Um, and things like that are what people relate to. So the shareability, if that's even a word, of the podcast, and people can digest it on Spotify, on the road, YouTube, when they're sitting there watching a video, or wherever they want to. That gets me. That means that the conversation can really get to the people and meet them where they are.
And that's brilliant. And I think it's important to like remind the listeners that it is about things being relatable and not about trying to apply a fix to everyone's problems, or look at what you can do once you've come through it. Or it's about
Mm.
helping them move through uh, whatever the trials and challenges are in those moments in time. And share it with the people who they feel might actually benefit from listening to it, whether that's because they're trying to explain without their own words what they're going through, or whether they're trying to say, "Hey, I think this might be useful for you with things in your life."
Yeah.
And because all too
And
often we watch those conversations where it's like, "Ah, and I've been through all this, and I've done this," or "I've been through all this, but my circumstances don't even remotely mirror yours." And they can be a little bit harder to relate to, I think.
yeah, and I agree with you completely, 100%. Sometimes there's always a happy ending where things have worked out, and someone's, selling a book, and good luck to them, but selling a book of their story and things are working their way through. A lot of our listeners that we've had feedback from, there is no happy ending. They are in the middle of what they're going through, and they're seeing life through very muddied glasses, and are not sure how and when and if they can continue to push through. So by seeing others who are directly relatable, it just, it makes them feel that they're not alone. And you're right about the presenting, and the podcast is so different. For years, I've been fortunate enough to chair panel discussions and firesides for organizations, um, big across the world and small. There is always someone you can meet when you're having those conversations. There's always someone in the audience. People used to join anonymously because by just joining a conversation or a webinar could be that admitting that they're going through whatever the issue it was on the discussion, whether it be financial anxiety, whether that be workplace bullying, whatever it. So here, at least people can digest this information without having to put any details in, can just relax anonymously and take the information for what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I look forward to the next wave of conversations when they land, and I look forward to kind of debriefing about those and kind of continuing the InSpirrall chats, as I think I'm going to refer to them now. So we're going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for sharing how things are going on your side, and I will catch up with you soon.
Yeah, to thank you once again for all your support and energy behind this. You truly have been and are amazing. Thank you.